Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 977 of the Juicebox Podcast. On today's podcast, Sorry, my phone wasn't muted. On today's podcast, I'll be speaking with Tina. She's the mom of a young man living with type 1 diabetes. She is very involved in the looping community. We're going to talk about looping and Omnipod 5 today. While you're listening to us talk about that, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. Check out the private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. You want to talk to some people who are looping or using Omnipod 5 or that new Medtronic 780G. I've been seeing a lot of posts for that lately. What else do I see? T-Slim, Libre, Dexcom, anything you want to talk about. We talk about it in there. Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. It's a private group with 40,000 members in it. I bet you there's a conversation happening right now that you would enjoy. I have a ton of episodes about algorithm pumping. Go to juiceboxpodcast.com, go up to the menu, click on algorithm pumping, or in the private Facebook group, the feature tab, there's a whole list of episodes. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Cozy Earth. Now, at CozyEarth.com, when you make your purchase, doesn't matter if you buy one thing or 50 things, if it's $1 or, $1 billion, if you use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout, you will save 40% off of your entire order. So just think of what 40% off $1 billion worth of joggers would be. And now I put myself in a position where I have to figure out what 40% of $1 billion is. All right, so $1 billion. I mean, just in case one of you buys $1 billion worth of sheets, towels, and joggers. $1 billion divided by 2, which would be $500 million, or 500 million, right? Yeah. So then you'd save $400 million off your $1 billion purchase with my offer code. That's incredible. Also, you'd save 40 cents off $1, $40 off 100. You know how percentages work. Anyway, that's what you get for listening to the podcast. 40% off at Cozy Earth when you use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. Today's podcast is also sponsored by one of my favorites, US Med. usmed.com/juicebox. Or call 888-721-1514. US Med is the place where Arden gets her diabetes supplies from, and you can as well. Get your free benefits check today with my link or that special 888 number that's just for Juicebox Podcast listeners. usmed.com/juicebox. Or call 888-721-1514. Get your stuff the way we do from US Med. First of all, let me turn it right on. If you're planning on crying, let's start recording right now.
It's been an emotional last couple of days.
Oh, okay. I cried. The episode that went up today. There's this young girl. She's like 18. She was talking about how she was trying to like do some public speaking.
Yeah.
So she set this thing up at her local library where she was going to talk about chronic illness and service dogs, and no one showed up. And she still gave the talk to the one person that helped her set the thing up from the library. And she's telling me this. And I am like,
oh, that's hard.
I'm like crying while she's telling me. And I was on cold medicine at the time. So I'm like, I think this might be the cold medicine. I was like, but she really got me. I was like, wow, she did it anyway.
You're starting to get me.
Yeah. You know, I mean, if I showed up and no one, listen, you don't know. Like if I showed up and no one showed up, I'd be like, I got to go.
I think it's even, I don't know. It's how awkward it is for the one person that's there too. You know?
And they all did it. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. So anyway, you introduce yourself the way you want to be known, meaning you don't need your last name. If you bring up other people in your life, I don't care. As a matter of fact, I don't care what you talk about. Like with all sincerity, you can talk about whatever you want, but just don't use someone's name and then an hour from now say, oh, I shouldn't have said like Patty's name. Like, you know, can you go back and take out the 17 times I mentioned my aunt or something like that? Like, please just don't do that. But other than that, it's absolutely up to you what you talk about. I don't care. Make sense?
I'll try not to say names.
Okay.
Or call names.
You can curse if you want. I'll just leave it up.
Yeah, right.
You go ahead, introduce yourself. We'll start talking. You are being recorded.
All right. Hey, I'm Tina, and I have a newly 13-year-old son who was diagnosed July of 2019. So he's getting ready to hit his 4 years, actually next week.
Yeah, wow.
And
was it right at the beginning of July?
it was July the 3rd.
Did he get it for the centennial, for July 4th? Was it
He sure did. It was on a Wednesday. Tuesday night, my husband Phil and I were talking about some problems he'd been having, which included a lot of bedwetting that had just arisen in the last 4 or 5 days. And we decided I would take him to the pediatrician to have it checked out, because actually we have quite a bit of history with older adults in our life with UTIs. And, so the first thing that's kind of coming to my mind is maybe he has a UTI, but also I was like, maybe it's his age and he's starting to hit a growth spurt, things like that. And so I said, I will take, give it a day and see how tomorrow goes. And if tomorrow things don't improve, then I'll take him into the pediatrician on Thursday and have him check for UTI. And my husband said, yeah, and have his sugar checked. And I literally, it's like one of those, memorable moments of life that I can't imagine. I was just like, I can't even fathom that would be an issue for him. But I said, okay, I will get up in the morning and I'm going to take him tomorrow morning instead of waiting, because I realized that the next day was the 4th of July, and Friday I was supposed to fly out to Chicago to see a friend. Mm-hmm. And so I actually wound up staying up for quite a while that night, checking and, just checking on him, and also thinking, well, maybe I should haul him into the ER. But then also, no, it can't be, because that's not, we don't have problems like that.
Right.
What? So the next morning I got up and I took him to the pediatrician immediately. Mm-hmm. And they had us in there by 8:30 and had him pee in a cup and brought a glucometer and checked his blood sugar. And the pediatrician put, Reese is sitting up, and I don't think I introduced my son's name. His name is Reese. Mm-hmm. But he's sitting on the table, and she puts the glucometer down on the other side of him, and she walks out of the room, and I'm sitting on the bench, and I stood up and I looked at the glucometer and it said 271. And it was literally like you see in a movie. Yeah. I felt like this, where you back up really fast and then slam into a wall, know? Mm-hmm. And I made no reaction. I just sat down and I waited. And she came back in, and actually before she came back in, Reese asked, Mom, why is there a blood sugar checker in here? And I said, why do you know what that is? And he says, I saw it on Tim and Moby. That's a little learning app that he has and enjoys. And I said, well, the symptoms that you have are, they're possibly symptoms of type 1 diabetes. And he immediately starts screaming, I want to have a normal functioning pancreas. And I'm just like, what? And he goes, and then he starts screaming, I don't want to die. I don't want to die, which got me, ripped me apart. And so anyway, they came back in and said, so he has type 1 diabetes, and we have called the hospital, and you need to go straight there, and they will rush you back. They're expecting him, and they'll get you in immediately. And we were actually right across the street from the hospital he was born in. And I said, do you mean the hospital right across the street? And she goes, oh no, he needs to go to the big hospital with the children's hospital. You're going to be there for several days. And I'm like,
oh, yeah. I have a couple of questions. Why did your husband think to say blood sugar?
Oh, I really don't know. But we have no diabetes in our family. We have no autoimmunity in our family, in our big family, and I just don't know. But I also felt kind of like an idiot because I have a medical background and that just wasn't the thing that I thought of either.
And then the other question I have is that where does Reese come up with functioning pancreas at 9 years old? Is it from an app or you don't know?
Reese is a little bit on the precocious side, shall we say. He has a lot of knowledge and he collects it about all kinds of different things. And he said everything he sees on there, he pretty much can reference in the future,
Wow. So, I mean, that's upsetting for you, but I was impressed with all that he knew. I mean, he was 9?
Yep. He had just turned 9.
That's crazy.
Yep. So I canceled my trip to Chicago and actually canceled my trip that was going to be a month later. I was supposed to go down to Guatemala, and we got on the ride.
Chicago and Guatemala? You have friends in Guatemala as well?
We have a group from our church who goes down. Well, it's not just a group, but different people go down and have been doing it for probably 12 or 15 years now. Built a library and have a lot of programs down in Guatemala in this certain village called Pala up in the mountains. And like they've taught tilapia farming and pig farming and, how to manage business.
Wow.
And then built a library, stocked them with computers, taught them how to use them. We have, we support students through scholarships. So they have to pay for school from middle school through high school through college. So we've got students that we support doing that.
Wow. That's
and
really
they take trips a couple times a year.
Very nice. Okay. So is Reese, how is he in the hospital? I'm trying to imagine him in the hospital with all of his like half knowledge that he has built up and what was going on. Like how did that process go for him?
He was so just worn out, and he had a lot of symptoms that of course we attributed to other things, but he was shocked. He was not happy. He was not comfortable. But we had such a good team in the hospital, and so many people came and saw us every day. There were usually a lot of people in there with us, and I think he took it pretty well. He gave himself his first shot in the hospital, and they eventually let us go home.
How about you? How did you take it?
Not as well. Yeah. I was a mess. And normally I'm like our family's medical reference person, the person they call when they have anything they want to know what it is, can you come check this out? And we're in the hospital and I'm asking my husband, can you talk to the doctor when he comes in? Because I don't have my words, and I was just devastated.
Okay.
And it literally took me, we were in there for 3 days, and it took me till about the time we left to feel like that I could be okay to leave.
Were you worried that you couldn't manage it, or was it like a psychological, like overwhelming, or where do you think you were?
Well, I had known people with type 1 pretty much all my life, not many people, but I had a friend in school when I was in elementary and middle school. And then I had a really good friend who in college who had it. And, I saw that they could live and thrive. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I just was not prepared at all. I knew it would alter our lives forever. And I wasn't prepared for that. And it really took me a while to be accepting of it.
Yeah. Where do we meet? I have a feeling, did we speak privately in the beginning? We did, right? Like by video, right? Like
we spoke, I had written something on the Facebook page, answer to something, I made a suggestion on somebody's post. And then you reached out and said, "Hey, Tina, can I call you?" And I said, "Sure." So I was actually at the emergency room with my mother when you called, and I stepped outside and we were talking where the ambulance pulls up, and you were like, if this isn't a good time, I'm like, this is a good time.
I'm looking not to be in the emergency room for a minute.
That was in it was either September or October of 2019.
Wow, such a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the I guess I just want to lead into how you got to looping at first. So what's the technology and the understanding you leave with at the hospital, and how long does it take you, and and what's the path you take to learn about looping?
So this is part of why it was so hard for me, is that my husband and I are both, I'm retired, shall I say, molecular biologists, and we deal with precision and accuracy. And, these people in the hospital are telling you, give him 1 unit for this many carbs. And if he goes below 70, give him 15 grams, that kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, what if he's at 71? And they're like, nope. I'm like, just questions like that.
Yeah.
Question after, okay, what if this? Nope, don't do it then. What, can I give him 10 carbs? Nope, give him 15. And I'm just like, okay. And then at some point I was like, I think back about it and I feel really kind of silly knowing what I know now, but they didn't tell me any differently. They didn't tell me the why, I guess I should say.
Okay.
But I would say, can you just tell us exactly how much for this or exactly how much for that? And they're like, no, you'll figure it out. And I'm like, but if we just know the exact number, everything, we can handle this. And that maybe was part of it, was like not being able to put your finger on it, you know?
Everybody who has diabetes supplies, but not everybody gets them from US Med the way we do. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. US Med is the #1 distributor for Freestyle Libre systems nationwide. They are the #1 specialty distributor for Omnipod DASH, the #1 fastest growing tandem distributor nationwide, and they always provide 90 days worth of supplies and fast and free shipping. That's right, US Med carries everything from insulin pumps to diabetes testing supplies, right up to your latest CGMs like the Freestyle Libre 2 and 3 and the Dexcom G6 and 7. They even have Omnipod DASH and Omnipod 5. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, and you can reach them at 888-721-1514 or by going to my link, usmed.com/juicebox. When you contact them, you get your free benefits check, and then if they take your insurance, you're off and going. And US Med takes over 800 private insurers and Medicare nationwide. Better service and better care is what US Med wants to provide for you. usmed.com/juicebox. Get your diabetes supplies the same way Arden does from US Med. Links in the show notes. Links at juiceboxpodcast.com to US Med and all of the sponsors. When you use my links, you're supporting the show. Okay, here's what happened yesterday. It was laundry day, so I took the sheets off of our bed and I put on brand new Cozy Earth sheets made of viscose bamboo. I did that, I promise you. That actually happened yesterday. Now, here's what happened fast forward like 12 hours later. I'm in here working, and my wife's like, I'm getting in bed. Like, do you want to watch TV? And I'm like, yeah, hold on a second. So she gets in bed, and I hear her go, ooh, new sheets. Just like that. That's what I heard her say. CozyEarth.com/juicebox. You can buy the same exact sheets that I did, the same exact way that I bought them, with the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. I saved 40% off of my purchase that day. I actually got sheets and a new pair of joggers that were smaller because I've lost weight. And I bought a something else, a pullover. So I saved 40%. You can save 40% off of your entire order at CozyEarth.com. Now, Cozy Earth has more than sheets. They have towels and women's and men's clothing that is so comfortable and soft and temperate, meaning not hot, not cold, just very comfortable whenever you're in those sheets or wearing their clothes. And I don't even want to tell you how excited I get to dry myself off after a shower, because I use the one side of my waffle towel for my initial dry, and then I flip it over to the other side for the rest. I don't know if that makes sense. Like I'm, super wet coming out of the shower. I go, like there's a little pattern on one side of it. I use that, absorbs. Then I flip it around to the super soft side, and I pamper myself while I'm, putting on my deodorant and doing my other machinations. CozyEarth.com/juicebox. Wrap all your bits in comfortable clothing with Cozy Earth. Use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout to save 40% off of your entire order. Hey guys, it really helps when you use the links. They are available in the show notes of your podcast player and at juiceboxpodcast.com, where you can type them into a browser. But when you make your purchases through my links, you are supporting the show. Isn't it interesting, right? There's so much information left out of that. Like, I understand the idea. If you get low, take 15 grams because we don't want you to keep getting low, and 15 should be enough. But then they don't talk about, like what you just said, like, what if really 15 is not the answer? What if the answer is 6 grams? Or, why can't I do something at a 75 blood sugar while it's falling if I know it's going to get lower? And it's because they're not there, and they don't know any of the details of the pretend scenario you're imagining in the future. So they give you this sort of like, I don't know, like it's an emergency like thing. It's like in case of blah, 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 pull this cord. Like that's kind of how it feels.
Yeah. And they don't take into account that maybe he doesn't need as much insulin for this exact same thing as he needed yesterday. They don't take it into account.
And I just think like one more sentence, but it might not always be like this, or you should adjust as the scenario dictates. Like it would be an amazing eye opener for people, and they wouldn't get stuck in these, like, this number, this happens at this situation, that happens. And instead they'd be able to see what's really big picture happening and make better decisions. And yet it's not talked about like that. And it should be.
I actually, at one point, I started, briefly working on a program to present to them being my son's endocrinologist, who he's the head of the system that we're in. And I have to say, I love him. He's amazing and very accommodating and supportive and everything, but he still, he doesn't live with it. He doesn't live with it in his house. But anyway, I was working on something to maybe be, the product of which to be something that they could give to new patients that said, this is where we're at now. You're at step 1 now. Right. When these things happen, we're going to teach you step 2. When things happen there, we're going to teach you step 3, and then I don't know, I got off that path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You were done being mad about it and you moved on to something else.
Well, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't come to fruition.
Yeah. Nobody was actually going to do anything with it.
Yeah.
No, I know. Okay. So he's managing with syringes, with pens. Do you get a CGM right away? Like, how does all that work?
So they gave him pens, 1-unit pens. And we actually had to, and his ratio was, I don't know, 1-to-25, something like that. And so we'd have to actually add carbs for every meal because we didn't want to take carbs away. We didn't want to say you can't eat as much as you're used to because you can't, you can't have the insulin for it, or we'll give you too much insulin. So we found ourselves actually giving him more and more carbs to make it so he could have 1 unit or 2 units. It depends on what he felt like. And then downstream, I finally asked the endo, I said, hey, I hear there are 1/2 unit pens. How about you prescribe one of those for us? And he says, I could do that, which really changed everything. And then, so he was diagnosed in July, and we were offered Dexcom not in the hospital. It was discussed. And then like even like when we went back 2 days later to his office, he offered it to us. And I was kind of like trying to settle down, trying to get a grip,
Yeah.
And I delayed it a little bit, but I think he was on it. I think it was like at his 2-week appointment.
Okay.
We got on it.
And that long ago, that's G6?
G6.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So so you jump in with a really good sensor already. I mean, G6 sensor is really good. So like you didn't go, G5 was like, they were still getting it. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
that's not bad. But only half unit, the need for half units still. So he's using a very little bit of insulin, I imagine.
Say again?
Was he using a very little bit of insulin mostly?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And we were, talking to the office, to the CDE, at least on the daily about changing his basal and, changing things. And then finally one day it was like, we don't need to call them, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
To realize that,
I remember that feeling like, I guess I don't really need to call. I guess I do know what to do here. Like that first moment where you think, I might be able to figure this out. It's pretty excellent.
But yeah, her endo offered us a pump pretty right away too. Mm-hmm. And I said, not ready. And it was like his just about 6 months, right after his 6-month anniversary, shall you say, that we did start on the pump. And going from half a unit capability down to 0.05 is astounding.
Yeah, that's a big deal, isn't it? What pump did you start with?
Omnipod.
Okay.
Yep.
And so when do you, because I'm assuming because of your background, you were looking into the technology a little bit and the idea of like wanting to be precise, like I'm assuming is what gets you to the internet, right? So What do you find first that like, is it me? Is it like something else? Like where do you start to dig in?
So you were in my back pocket from pretty much day one, because a friend whose son is type 1, who's a little older than my son, she reached out and said, we'd like to come see you in the hospital. And we decided we didn't want anybody to come see us. That's how freaked we were. Mm-hmm. But she stayed in touch, and she said, I have these recommendations. And she said, the number one was Juicebox Podcast. Oh, good. And I was like, what is that? And so I was intrigued, but I was really afraid of going on the internet or, anywhere and starting to hear scary stories. And my heart couldn't take that. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I just can't. So I did no research at all. And I didn't start listening to the podcast for a little while. And it was a few weeks in, I finally was like, okay, I'm ready to start branching out, ready to start learning more. And so I found what I felt was a safe book, and it very much was. And I started listening to the podcast and joined the Facebook group. And would you like me to elaborate?
No, I like that idea, because I think, first of all, I have two thoughts. There's somebody right now in that situation who will start to listen to this podcast 6 months from now. Somebody's told them about it and they think it's a good idea, but they're not going to do it. I'm learning very much that my adoption, the rate of adoption takes a long time for people. Like people don't just go, oh, what, there's a podcast, it helps, great, I'll start listening right now. Like some people do, but for the most part, it doesn't go that way. And that's the second thing I wanted to say, is that I understand that. Like I make this podcast, I see everybody's feedback, I know how it helps them. And yet when I hear it, I think, yeah, that doesn't make sense. Like, why would I just start listening to a podcast because my kid was diagnosed with something? Or because I turn up at the doctor and he's like, hey, you have type 1 diabetes. Your first thought's not, I should probably go find a podcast. Like, it's some people's first thought, but not most people. And it's not sexy, or like, some of these podcasts that are like all about like, oh, we're going to biohack you into being like lean and like that kind of crap that doesn't actually work for anybody.
If you could biohack, that would be awesome.
Yeah. By the way, like all that stuff that everybody wants to be true, but for the most part doesn't work for anyone. But I understand why those are popular even. And I understand why somebody could be easily drawn into it. I think it's a slog to get to this. I have to be honest with you. I don't know if Arden was diagnosed and somebody told me there was a podcast about diabetes and it would help me. I don't think I would have listened to it either. So,
yeah, I just wasn't ready to take in more really personal / subjective information. Yeah. It's like, I need the subjective. I need the how to keep him alive, how to help him thrive, how to make it work. And then once I got that down, haha. Once I felt, like, okay, I think we can make it through a day. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, go ahead and add in. And, honestly, yours is the first podcast that I started listening to of any podcast, because I had checked out podcasts before and I was like, oh, they're so hard. Like, hard to pick what podcast to listen to and hard to know, what to download and when to download and how much it's going to, monopolize my phone and, things like that.
I understand. I'm also very snobby about how people's voices sound. Like, I don't want to hear like nasally people talk to me. Fake energy bothers me a lot. So, I'm bad at that. There's a lot of reasons why I start to listen to something and then think, oh, no, this isn't for me.
I've bought a book on Audible a couple times and started to listen. I'm like, I can't.
You can't do it.
And so I got a refund.
Yeah. Also bad microphones, bad audio, like stuff like that. Like, I've gotten better obviously over the years, but even on day one, I didn't know what I was doing. I still overspent on a microphone. I thought it has to sound good, or like, what's the point? Like, I wish I would have bought this one first, if I'm being honest with you. But anyway, okay. So you find this, you start to dig in. What is it you figure out first? And how long does it take you to think, I want automated insulin delivery?
So honestly, the comfort of having people who are in the same boat you're in and hearing how well that, how they can live and keep going and smile and laugh and everything, that was of such benefit to me. Mm-hmm. And always is, because community is everything with type 1. Community is everything. And I help a lot of people that are newly diagnosed or who have kids that are, and that's what I tell them to start with. I'm like, community is everything. And I do start the baby steps, and I always tell them about the podcast and tell them about the Facebook group. And I'm like, it's, it may be overwhelming at first. So you may want to peek at it and not jump in, or you may want to jump in, but there are people that'll help you there in the wee small hours of the morning, which, you did me very, pretty early on, right, when Reese got double dosed one night before bed. And this is in the very early days, when we were finger sticking. No, it was after Dexcom, but yeah, something I won't forget.
I can't tell you how many people I've had phone conversations with over the years who I've only ever met that one time. I've never seen them again, but through a confluence of circumstances, somebody points them to you online and they reach out and say something that just doesn't seem like it's something you can manage by typing back and forth. And the I took too much insulin story is pretty common. I've had more than my fair share of conversations with people where they're like, hey, I don't know what to do right now. Like, I'm this close to calling 911. And instead they're talking to like a stranger on the phone, and you're telling them like common sense things. I'm like, look, first of all, I'm not a doctor, and call 911 if you want to. I'm like, but you just injected this much insulin. what's your carb ratio? Let's reverse engineer this math and see how much you'd have to eat for this just to be a really good pre-bolus, and that is usually what gets people through most of the time. And, some people.
Yeah. And
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
There were times also when I, was up at night trying to deal with it and just very lonely. And I'm like, I'm going to turn on the podcast because this is, these are people who, are in the same boat as I am, who can keep me company through the night. So there have been, been times where you've kept me company through the night. And we always appreciate that.
Very nice.
But I'd say the first thing after the great community, probably one of the first things was that you don't need to throw 15 grams at it. And I guess along with that, if you need more insulin, you need more insulin.
Right. Yeah, it's a big step for people, isn't it? Like that, it seems so silly when you say it out loud, but your blood sugar is high, you probably need more insulin. That's
and
it's a hard
and
thing.
I sometimes when Reese is high or when he's high, I'll be like, well, I'm going to bolus him for say a 1 unit snack. And if he needs a snack, he'll get it. And if he doesn't need it, he won't get it. And I think if you think of it in that sort of way, it's a lot easier to give, to go ahead and give another unit or however much he needs. And it's not like I go say, hey, you want a snack? You might get it or you might not. I don't do that.
I'm going to give you some insulin, then we'll decide later if you're getting ice cream. No,
I do have. Oh, sorry, Scott.
No, is that from that idea of like when I tell that story about Arden getting high at basketball? Is that where that comes from? When I say like, look, we used to show up at this thing. Sometimes her blood sugar would rise, sometimes it would fall, and we didn't know about adrenaline at that time. Like we were still figuring it all out. But I couldn't show up and watch her blood sugar jump to 220. So I started bolusing. I started pre-bolusing what I thought the rise was going to be. But then my wife was like, well, what if it doesn't go up? It didn't go up last week. And I said, well, in that case, I'll just give her enough insulin that we're basically pre-bolusing a juice box. And if it doesn't go up, then she can drink the juice to counteract the insulin. Is that where that whole thought comes from for you?
I don't know. I don't know. I think I do remember that. Mm-hmm. But I remember trying, wrestling with how much, this is a lot of insulin to give him. But if I just change my thought process of it as, being bolus for a snack, then, and just wait.
Yeah. Because
he's not in a range where I would give him a snack. If I just wait for him to get there, he might have it. And then I started actually extrapolating. Okay. So when he was first on the pump, or when he was on the pump, just the pump, his DIA, I think, was 2 hours. And so I'd be like, okay, at 1 hour, I know from experience, this is how much insulin we really have to deal with. So I would see how fast he would start coming down. And if it took a while for him to start, I would know we're dealing with a smaller snack, if we're dealing with a snack at all, like that. And that's the kind of thing where the scientist in me engages. So maybe over fully.
Well, so when do you find out about like DIY looping, and how long does it take you to make your way into understanding it and actually doing it?
So pretty well, right after Reese was diagnosed, I had a lot of people, probably more than a dozen people, say, I want to come talk to you. I have type 1, somebody in my family has type 1, or I want to introduce you to somebody that I know who has a kid with type 1. Mm. And so it was actually wonderful and so overwhelming. And, the people that I was the closest to, they're the ones that, that of course came first, and not everybody got, needed to come. But I remember one of them told me a few things that I went downstream and checked out. And I think that one of them was DIY looping. And at first I was like, there is no way. And in fact, I remember telling Reese's Endo, there is no way I would ever do that. It's not FDA approved. It's, I don't know who these people are, the whole.
Yeah.
how could I possibly?
Reasonable reactions to that news that there's people
Yeah.
online making an algorithm.
Yeah. So for a long time, I was, for too long, I guess because I wasn't sleeping, I was like, I'm not. And then all of a sudden I'm like, we're going to build Loop. Phil, you build it, build Loop. And it's like, here's the computer, here are the directions, build Loop. And so he did, and we got Reese up and running, and closed the loop on the night of the second day. And I was up late watching it, and I was like, I'm gonna close this. I'm gonna see what happens. I'm gonna go to sleep. And it wasn't like, close it, go to sleep. It was close it, watch it for a while, go to sleep. And I got the best night's sleep I had in months. And that's how we launched with it.
Yeah. Hey, the sleep will sell you for sure on any of the algorithms at all. Absolutely sell you. So did you get involved in it then? Like, were you helping on like Loop pages on Facebook, and like, did you get involved, or did you stay on the outskirts of it?
So I pretty, as the documentation for Loop is vast in Loop Docs. And it says, do not print this out, read it online because it changes frequently. So I printed the whole thing out. Literally, it's a notebook this thick, because reading online for me is like I might get lost. I'm not sure where to go back to. I can easily mark pages easier. And keep in mind that if I really want to know if something's critical, go look online and whatnot. So I printed it out and I read the docs, and he read the docs, and found the Looped Facebook group and went on there and did lots of reading and some question asking. And I saw on somebody's post there was an answer about how to bolus for meals that was very different from what I was used to doing at all. I was used to bolusing for carbs and then later bolusing for fat and protein on the rise. And so the person that wrote answered this question on the post, I said, hey, would you mind if I asked you some questions? And she said, sure. So we went private and I asked her some questions, and she helped me, figure out how to do things the way she was saying, and told me why she did them that way. And, and she spent a good bit of time that day with me, which I was not expecting. And then the next morning I said, hey, this is how the night went. I said, would you mind if I asked you a couple more questions? And she said, I'm going to stay with you. So she did. And she actually is on my admin team for Loop and Learn. And somehow down the way, another person who's on the admin of Loop and Learn asked me if I wanted to help with some things there. And then eventually I was invited to become a moderator on the page.
Gotcha. That's great.
Or in the group, I should say.
It's how it works. Like, somebody has to stay behind and it helps somebody else. Like most people move on, but some people stay, and it's lovely. And you had that experience, somebody helped you, and you thought, well, I'll hang around and help somebody else.
Yep. I've always been, like if somebody needs help, you help them, period.
Yeah. Unless
it causes harm to you or somebody that, somebody else.
Right.
But generally, if somebody needs help, you help them. So I really am, about helping people in every way that I possibly can. And I'm not a code person. I have made some suggestions that have become some code, which I'm very happy about. But as for the coding itself, no clue.
Give me an example of something you suggested that ended up in the app.
It's not in the app. It's a what do you call it? A patch / customization is one. And this is one I wasn't the only person that suggested it, but I kind of pushed that, and it's the now bar that used to be part of Loop, the bar that is like where you are now. And here's, behind it's the history and in front of it's the future. And so we kind of, got a little ruckus going about that again. And the person who writes or who has historically written most of the code for Loop didn't want it in there. And so wouldn't.
Oh, you froze. Tina, you are frozen. Frozen. Tina,
are you frozen?
You were frozen for a while.
Okay.
So I don't know if you were.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, he didn't want it in there.
Ah.
Can you hear me yet?
Yeah. Okay. So
go back to the coder.
Didn't want it in there, so it became a patch.
Okay. But so people, I mean, I have it. I think it's nice.
Yeah, I was like, constantly like holding the phone at an angle, like trying to see exactly where we are. Precision, accuracy. But like, it was just really valuable, and he didn't want it. And I'm like, why is it that big of a deal that you won't put it back in there? But we got it back. So anyway, yeah, I enjoy being a moderator in Loop, and I do a lot of editing, and I was organizing the editing team for a while, and we have kind of a big team, but not very many on the team actually do anything. So
I have a lot of experience with that. It's hard to there's never a shortage of people who say they want to help. But the people who follow through are lesser than those who yell, "I want to help." Like I have a fairly robust Facebook group. I think that's a polite. Yeah, I was gonna say. I think it's a polite way to say it. I don't want to say that I have the most active and valuable diabetes Facebook group that exists, but I think I do. But that's neither here nor there. But there's so many people in it and so many posts. Like, there's two options. Either you get people to help you, or you just go Wild West and you tell people, like, look, I'll do what I can do, but for the most part, you're on your own, which is how I grew it, honestly. Like, I was not a very active, I'm not into telling people how to be.
I remember when people were offering to help and you were like, nope, this is a solo thing. Yeah. And then all of a sudden,
one day I was
you turn the corner or hit the wall or something.
I don't know what I hit. I might have turned the wall and hit the corner. But I was just like, wow, this is so big. It does, I haven't looked. It changes so quickly that I haven't looked in a little while. But my best guess is that it does 110 on average posts every day. Like, I think that's about where it's at.
Wow. Yeah. That's a lot to keep up with.
Yeah. And you can't, honestly. Like, you can try and you can do your best, etc. But it's not something that you can just, I don't know. You just can't stay on top of it the way that I think people would expect that you should. Except I've learned that that's not really important. Like, you don't have to moderate it, like, quote unquote, the way people think you do. Mostly people are decent and they do the right thing for the most part.
Yeah, and they drag you in when they need to. And I know I've done that before. Yeah. Scott, you need to see this.
Yeah, once in a while I get the hey, come over here. But I'm looking right now. There's just under 40,000 members.
Wow.
In the last month, 36,000 of them were active. And the average day is about 100 posts. It can go up to 125, and every once in a while it goes down to 80, but only a couple of times a month. So there's
slow days.
Yeah, the slow days. There's 80 new posts.
Yeah, there's no way you can keep up with that. Yeah. And I can't keep up with the posts in Loop and Learn. I don't try. I don't try on the daily to keep up with them. I do like to keep up with them, but I'm so busy with other things too that's hard for me. And I'm not the person either that is like, this is how you make it all work. That's not me. I do have insight and cool things to share sometimes.
Right.
But yeah, there are people on there though that I don't know how they do it. They see, they basically see everything. They are able to answer the questions. They have the knowledge. They have the ability to convey it.
It's astonishing.
It really is.
You have between so it's a private group, so you have to answer questions to get in. But there are some times where the algorithm holds you up and then you have to be hand approved by somebody. I have to hand approve 30 accounts a day. And then eventually, there's going to be a scammer every 3 months or every 3 weeks. And you got to go in there and like stop somebody from scamming somebody out of money or like something like that. And then once in a while, somebody goes crazy. Like last night, somebody went crazy. And I was like, where did that even come from? I was like, how did that happen? And it was crazy. It was, this person had gotten, not in my group, in a different group, they had gotten ripped off. Somebody told them they were selling supplies. They gave them some money, and the person wasn't even a person. It was just a scammy account. They took their money and, didn't give them anything. So they went around to try to tell people about this, which is, I thought great. Look out for these accounts. Like I got scammed by them. Another person comes in and says like, hey, like, you got to be careful. Like it was like that kind of thing. And then those two people didn't jive. And then somehow these two people who completely agreed
and we're trying to help people
started fighting with each other. And I was like, and it doesn't happen often. Like I know people probably imagine that that's what Facebook is constantly. I'm very proud of my group. Like it does not devolve like that hardly ever. But now I'm watching them fight with each other and I'm like, what is going on? And I'm working. Like it's 10 o'clock at night. I'm making a podcast. I'm building web pages for the podcast. I'm answering emails. I've got like 30 people that want to come on the show. I'm trying to get back to them. People want to buy ads. I'm like all by myself. And I'm like, you like stop arguing.
It's funny. It's easy to get provoked. It really is. I know there have been a couple times where I've been like, and answer to somebody. And I'm like, do I want that out there? No. Go back and delete it.
Yeah. Well, anyway, like it just like it's overall, and I don't even want to say this like I'm like, oh, overall, it's good. It like exceedingly overall, it's amazing. It's just, it really I'm saying is. That if you're a background person looking at it, like the little things that pop up are just like, oh, no, don't do this. Like not now. Like why now? Or like, I'm in the middle of like trying to bring my kid home from school or something. And I've got like 3 notes like, hey, you got to look at this post. And I'm like, oh, leave me out of this.
Yeah.
Anyway. But it's a really valuable way to learn, to ask questions, to lurk. I've never seen lurking be more valuable. Like I had a woman pop up the other day and she sent me a note. She's like, I got to tell you, I've been in this group for 3 years. She's like, it's helped me immensely. I've never once posted or answered anybody. I just like, I'm a faceless avatar, but I just wanted to tell you how like helpful this was for me. Like a person who's really engaged in it, but you would have no way of knowing.
Oh, wow.
It's pretty much
Ghost.
Like, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. Ghost. So now you're looping and you find looping to be valuable. It's working for Reese. Like you're happy with it.
Yes.
But you don't use loop anymore.
Well, we are currently looping.
Oh, okay.
But we've gone back and forth a little bit. We started using Omnipod 5 back in July of last summer.
Okay.
Used it for 2 months and then back to loop because there were things about Omnipod 5 that, I should say about loop that I missed and things about Omnipod 5 that were bothering me, such as I was not used to the lack of being able to control, adjust things.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like being able to bolus from a watch, which is really nice. And, several other things, but also I did find that the time that I spent dealing with data, trying to get settings right, trying to understand, drastically drastically reduced when we were using 05. And I valued that highly. And so, we went back to loop. And then in November, I believe, it was in October, somebody asked me about sharing information about 05 so that he's thinking about putting his daughter on it. And so I did. And then I said, hey, do you want us to hop back over onto 05 and go through it with you? And so I did that. And he's learned vast amount about it, way beyond what I started. And he's helped me quite a bit, and he's helped a lot of your listeners. And and learning to be less controlling with the management. That's a huge gift of Omnipod 5.
Yeah.
And I just really appreciate that. And I took that when we transferred back to Loop again in December. I took that back and I was trying to tinker things and loosen up things to make it so that we didn't need to be as precise. And I feel like I did a really good job of that. And part of the reason that we hopped back over, one of the reasons was that we were having trouble with lows on Omnipod 5.
Okay.
And I was like, had I raised the target up, had I restarted, had I done some of those things back then, I could have overcome that, but that's not what I did. So then, honestly, we made some videos about Omnipod 5, and we've had a lot of discussion about it between four of us. And in January, we had a ski trip coming up. My family did, and I said, we're gonna start O5 again, and I'm gonna start it at a very reduced basal and see what happens. Put him on the ski slope. So we, and part of the draw is that the system runs magnificently without, needing to have your phone near it or needing to have the controller near it.
Right.
That's, so we've used it for a total of 6 months. And in the time that we've used it, we've had 2 times when it came disconnected. Yeah. Twice.
That's amazing. Right.
And when I couldn't find numbers on my phone, I'd go look on the controller, and there would be numbers. Yeah. So it's astounding in its reliability there. But yeah, we tried it back again in January and stayed on it for another 3 months. And honestly, I think we ran out of pods. So I switched back over to Loop, and we've been doing that since April.
Where are you going to land, do you think?
Well, see, that used to really, eat at me. I was like, I need to make a choice. I've got 1 foot on the boat and 1 foot on the shore, and I need to make a choice. But honestly, they both do such a good job, depending on, the time you want to put in, the needs that you have. Yeah. I feel grateful that we're able to use both. And I also have no problem with tinkering with settings. Just like, let's see how this works. It's not like, I got to make sure I do the exact right thing and I keep him down in range. Yeah. I don't like it when he's out of range, but I also know how to fix that. And I also know how to tell if we're headed in the wrong direction, so, but with, I was actually quite tickled, with O5 and what I feel is my growth and understanding of it. So we started him with the low basal when we went skiing, and that was a complete dumpster fire day because we lost Dexcom about an hour into skiing. And then when we got a new one up and running, it was 200 high, and a lot of times it floats back down, and lands for you nicely. And we were afraid to calibrate it, and it was going from 200 high to 100 high and back and forth. So we just pretty much left him high the whole time. And then I was like, okay, I need to get this things right on here. And because downstream, what I was seeing was that the max insulin bar, the little orange bar, was appearing. And I was like, okay, the way to change this is to restart it with higher basal. And so I did, and it just solved the problem and everything settled out.
So when your first idea to outsmart it was, we're going to be doing activities, so I'll restart the system with a lower basal rate, but that wasn't enough. And so you went back to the regular basal rate that you should have used, or you got more aggressive, or was it somewhere in between?
What I did, so the point was to keep him from going low. Make it so that it's more aggressive, but so it'll hit harder, but raise the target so that he has plenty of time, plenty of space to, if it hits too hard, to land. Because one of the issues with him is he goes from very sensitive to not very sensitive. Okay. And he flips. And is that something you hear about with boys a lot?
I mean, in my heart, I would wonder if that wasn't like activity related.
Oh, we see the activity related needs change.
Yeah,
definitely.
What about around growth?
Yep, and he's been growing like a maniac lately, and that was not something that we saw. We didn't see that for a long time, and then we started seeing that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, somewhere between growth, activity, eating. Like, this is eating cycle differently. Does he eat heavier carbs sometimes than others? That kind of stuff.
It's pretty random.
Yeah, that could be.
Honestly, he's a regular diet eater.
Yeah.
And we never, even before diabetes, we didn't do a lot of cake, and we did it on special days. It wasn't like every day you get a cookie, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But he also, he eats plenty of that, but there are times, like, for example, he's swimming. He has swim team practice at 3:30 these days. So I want to get him his IOB, insulin on board, reduced by the time it's time for that. Yep. So I don't feed him, or I try not to have him eat high protein, high fat for lunch. I try to push that more towards breakfast on these days. And then at lunch, make it so it's more carby. So the insulin's out of his system. He doesn't have to have that next bolus.
Right. That's great. I mean, I think most of like successful activity is not having insulin on board while you're during the activity. Like, it's just, it's the easiest way to avoid lows, I think. You just have to move meals around a little bit so that, so that active insulin isn't there during the, I don't know, whatever you're doing. What kind of sports does he play?
Yeah, he's a swimmer.
Oh, just swimming.
So he's a year-round swimmer.
Yeah. So that's a lot of effort and a lot of, I would imagine you can get pretty low while you're swimming. And then
and we've sent him in with more insulin on board. I like to send him in with about half a unit or less. Right. And if it's old, that's great.
Yeah.
But we sent him in with a lot more, and with it being fresher. But and some days we find we can handle that better than others. But honestly, the fact that we can't see his numbers when he's in the pool, that's what really makes it the hardest.
Because Bluetooth doesn't work through water.
Actually we did get, we put the pod and the transmitter, the sensor, next to each other a few times.
And the algorithm for Omnipod 5 kept working?
And it worked in the pool.
Yeah.
But it's not reliable.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I don't know if people understand or are listening that Omnipod 5, like if you're thinking about Loop, the algorithm lives in an app on your phone. And so the brain is in the phone, and then it has to talk to the pod. The Omnipod 5, which is was the system made by the company, the algorithm actually lives on the circuit board inside of the pod. So you don't need to be anywhere near your phone, because the sensor, right now just G6, is talking directly to the pod. So even if you don't see anything on a screen somewhere, it's still talking back and forth. And you're saying that even though he was in the water, you got some connectivity out of that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Right. But I've thought about actually making some kind of a bubble thing where you can put them both together and put adhesive around it, and try and keep them in contact without water between them when he's in the pool. But
Yeah, no, I think, Tina, you've got a little too much free time. You might want to find a hobby. If you're thinking about
right.
that.
I have free time.
You got to find a different hobby is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay. So I appreciate all this. Like, we're coming up on an hour. I want to make sure we're not missing anything. Is there anything haven't talked about so far that you wanted to make sure we did?
Let's see. I think we're pretty good. The point is, I guess, between Omnipod 5 and Loop is I just find them both to be incredibly valuable. I find, part of the thing with Loop too is, since I am doing the service that I do via Loop and Learn, it kind of benefits me to be in that realm, which I fumbled a little bit with my O5 speak, I think, and that's probably because I'm not as in that realm right now.
Yeah.
But and as far as the Loop and Learn goes, Omnipod 5 is just, I think it's a great thing.
Yeah.
And the chief medical officer of Insulet has told us and told me personally more than once that if it weren't for the DIY community, Insulet would be nowhere near where they are. Omnipod 5 wouldn't be what it is, and she has said, thank you so much. And so I feel like, aside from all the other, reasons to do it, to keep pushing with DIY, even though there are some really good FDA approved options, I feel like it's really great to keep pushing because innovation is constant. There are some new things coming up in the Loop realm that are going to be really helpful to people.
Anything you want to tell me about?
Well, actually, there's a section. It's on the Loop and Learn website. It's not in Loop Docs because it's Loop and Learn specific, but it's a development section in the customizations section of the build section. And there are 3 new things in there. There's I get this wrong, but it's glucose. Let me get in my app and I'll see glucose-based partial application factor. And that one's been pushed to dev, actually, to the dev branch. That one allows, when you're in autobolus, it starts ramping up starts at a lower amount of insulin bolus, and then it ramps it up as your glucose rises instead of it being a constant 40%, or the constant 17% that Temp Basal offers. There's that one. And then another one that's been pushed to dev is the integral retrospective correction, which actually uses more information looking back as to what happened, and it will affect what it does from there with that.
Interesting.
And then there's also one that's called Profiles, and I'm super excited about this one. It allows you to set up a different profile or different profiles. Just like right now, you probably have one profile set up on the phone, but you can duplicate it and then change some things and then say, this is Tuesday, this one is the main one. This is Tuesday because Tuesday is, this activity that I need to change things for. And then you can just choose your profile when you need it.
Nice.
And it's like, it runs constantly instead of setting on an override.
Wow. That's very cool. I love that.
Yeah.
When do you think we see all that?
Well, the first 2 that I told you about have just been pushed into dev, I think on the 23rd. And then I'm not sure about this one, but I think once people are trying it in dev, there are a lot of people that are using these already. And when they see it be stable in dev and see that it's what they want, they'll push it to the main loop.
Cool. So that'll happen in loop 3?
Yes.
Yeah.
Unless, I say yes. There are things that happen that make a leap from loop 2 to loop 3, and there will be something that makes a leap from loop 3 to loop 4. It's probably not this, but
right.
I can't be sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. All right, cool. Well,
yeah.
Way to timestamp your episode to get it moved up in the player. Good job. You just got yourself out way ahead. That's very exciting news. And I can see the value top of my head for the different profiles, 100%. And the ramping up is a big deal. And also being retrospective. I mean, all this is good information, right? Because I'm assuming the retrospective part is it's going to be able to say, hey, 2 hours ago, you made a pretty big bolus. And, you said there were 80 carbs here, but we're still 200. So I can't just assume this is all going to be okay. I got to be more aggressive. Is that the idea of that?
It is expected to be more. Oh, well, I haven't tested it yet.
Yeah.
But those that have say, yes, it does do a better job with that.
Well, that's exactly where it needs
and
help.
if your settings aren't right, it could be more aggressive than you want.
Mm-hmm.
And right now I have the glucose. It's funny. I remembered the name as an acronym based on another acronym that I'm familiar with, and then they changed the acronym on me, so I stumble. But it's glucose-based partial application factor, and that one we started using on Saturday or Friday, and I'm wanting to see what that does.
Yeah.
Before I apply the next one.
Yeah, good. I can't wait. I love it. I have people who help me. I am going to tell you I'm inept at Loop for the most part, like the back end stuff, like the setting it up and that stuff. I don't know. My brain doesn't just work that way, but people are always very kind and help me. The kindness of a community, the people in the community is, I've never seen anything like it. Yeah.
I've never seen anything like it. And I've never had occasion to need anything like it. Mm-hmm. But truly, people in this community are just astoundingly giving. And
no, I agree.
Yeah.
I can't tell you. I'm
and that includes you.
Oh, stop. I mean, listen, I deserve a little help. I get the word out about Loop pretty well. So
yeah.
But it's just not like I'm a good example of my brain doesn't wrap around it. If it wasn't for people, let's be more honest. If it wasn't for the podcast, then people would probably not be as interested in helping. But I bet you I still could find somebody to help. I'm just saying, like, my brain, like, as many times, like, Mike's a great example. Mike's been helping me for like a year, right? With Arden. Mm-hmm. And he tells me something, and every time he tells me, I think, you know what, I'm going to remember this so that I don't have to bother Mike again. And then it comes up, and I'm like in a blank panic. I'm like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what's wrong with how my brain works, but it doesn't work.
Well, it's funny because I can, we have a new way to build Loop that doesn't involve a Mac. We have a couple new ways to do it. One of which Mike just built, made and dropped on us one time, and that was the remote build. Mm-hmm. Amazing. But the Xcode build on the Mac has been refined so much that it's gotten very easy to do. I've built, I don't build super often, but I can build it without help, and I can help other people do it, which is awesome for me because I want to help people.
Yeah.
And but the new browser build that you do on GitHub, which you can do on a PC, I've actually read the documentation for that numerous times. I've edited it. I've made changes to it that help it be more readable and usable and stuff. I can't do it by myself. Like I've tried, and I'm like, it's just, there's something missing.
One of the most astounding things that's happened in the last year is that there was the app needed to be rebuilt, and Arden was at school 700 miles from here. And Mike was like, here, we'll just do this, click here. That'll send her an email. Then she just clicks on the email and it just builds the app on her phone. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Magic.
That sounds magical.
We call him Magic Mike.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm sure he would really love that. And I'm like, you know what? Now I actually have an episode with Mike recorded. I'm going to put yours out first, and then I'm going to put his out, and I'm going to call his Magic Mike. Don't tell him, just to mess with him. That'll be terrific.
Get in trouble.
Yeah. But I swear to you, as it's happening, I'm like, that's amazing. And then we went to do it again, and I just I'm like, I know there's a way to do it. I don't remember it. And I always feel like he's looking at me like, you idiot. Like just,
oh no,
but he's
Mike
not. He's so lovely. Yeah.
He's such a kind, he's such a kind person and such a cool person.
Yeah.
And patient.
Mm-hmm.
And he, he has a degree in computer stuff, and that's one of his gifts,
Yeah. No,
and
wonderful.
I have another guy who will remind you of Mike a bit, who I'm going to send your way too. That I think you'll really like.
Okay. Wonderful. I love these conversations. Yeah. So I appreciate this one with you today and the one that I had with Mike. And God, who did I just have on recently that did such a good job of talking about moving from Loop to Omnipod 5? God,
John Foster.
John. Yeah. Well, his episode's terrific.
It is terrific.
Yeah.
He's like a savant, sage.
I mean, the way he talks about it is just very clear to me. And that's a skill in itself, right? To be talking about something so technical and to make it feel accessible while you're talking about it. It's really, really a skill.
Yep. And he's his daughter is mostly managing on her own now. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're moving to. We've, Reese is 13, as I said. And so I'm not pushing for him to be independent anytime real soon, but we're working towards that.
Oh, I'll tell you right now that Arden's like, she's independent with it. Like I'll help her sometimes, or I'll send her a note and I'll be like, hey, you need to, like, you got to be more aggressive here, or whatever you did 2 hours ago didn't work, or like that kind of stuff. But like she handles it. Like even the other day, she's home now. And I walked into her room and I was like, hey, you need to, she's like, I got it. I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, no, it's great. So
I bet you're glad to have her home.
I really am. I would like it if everybody came home and we just pretended it was 10 years ago and we lived here forever, but I don't think that's going to happen. So
that's how I feel too.
Yeah, it's something. Okay. All right, Tina, thank you so much for doing this with me. I really appreciate it. A huge thank you to Tina for coming on today and sharing her story with us and talking so much about Loop and algorithms. I also want to thank Cozy Earth for being a great sponsor this year. They're still with us because you guys are going to CozyEarth.com and using the offer code Juicebox when you make a purchase. So thanks to them and thanks to you. Let's also thank the place where Arden gets her Dexcom and Omnipod supplies from, US Med. Go to usmed.com/Juicebox or call 888-721-1514. Get your free benefits check today, and once you know everything's good to go, you can get your supplies the same way we do from US Med. The After Dark series from the Juicebox Podcast is the only place to hear the stories that no one else talks about. From smoking weed to drinking with type 1, perspectives from both male and females about having sex with diabetes. We talk about depression, self-harm, eating disorders, mental illness, heroin addiction, use of psychedelics, living with bipolar, being a child of divorce, and honestly, so much more. I can't list them all. But you can by going to juiceboxpodcast.com, going to the top, and clicking on After Dark. There you'll see episode 807, called One Thing After Another, episode 825, California Sober. Other After Dark episodes include Unsupported, Survivor's Guilt, Space Musician, Dead Frogs. These titles will make you say, what is this about? And then when you listen, you'll think, that was crazy. Juiceboxpodcast.com. Find the After Dark series. It's fantastic. If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, the Bold Beginnings series from the Juicebox Podcast is a terrific place to begin listening. In this series, Jenny Smith and I will go over the questions most often asked at the beginning of type 1. Jenny is a certified diabetes care and education specialist who is also a registered and licensed dietitian, and Jenny has had type 1 diabetes for 35 years. My name is Scott Benner, and I am the father of a child who has type 1 diabetes. Our daughter Arden was diagnosed in 2006 at the age of 2. I believe that at the core of diabetes management, understanding how insulin works and how food and other variables impact your system is of the utmost importance. The Bold Beginnings series will lead you down the path of understanding. The series is made up of 24 episodes, and it begins at episode 698 in your podcast or audio player. I'll list those episodes at the end of this. To listen, you can go to juiceboxpodcast.com, go up to the menu at the top, and choose Bold Beginnings, or go into any audio app like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and then find the episodes that correspond with the series. Those lists again are at Juicebox Podcast up in the menu, or if you're in the private Facebook group, in the featured tab. The private Facebook group has over 40,000 members. There are conversations happening right now and 24 hours a day that you would be incredibly interested in. So don't wait. Check out the Bold Beginnings series today and get started on your journey. Episode 698 defines the Bold Beginnings series. 702, honeymooning. 706, adult diagnosis. 711 and 712 go over diabetes terminologies. In episode 715, we talk about fear of insulin. In 719, the 15-15 rule. Episode 723, long-acting insulin. 727, target range. 731, food choices. 735, pre-bolus. 739, carbs. 743, stacking. 747, flexibility. In episode 751, we discuss school. In episode 755, exercise. 759, guilt, fears, hope, and expectations. In episode 763 of the Bold Beginnings series, we talk about community. 772, journaling. 776, technology and medical supplies. Episode 780, treating low blood glucose. Episode 784, dealing with insurance. 788, talking to your family. And episode 805, illness and ketone management. Check it out. It will change your life. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.